Bumbling and stumbling Biden. How long can the media cover for him? You got gas lines across the Southeast, rising inflation, record illegal border crossings, plus Liz Cheney booted from leadership, and Rand Paul pushes Fauci on gain of function. You know, they're actually allowing the Biden White House. The journos are letting Biden's people vet and edit and change their quotes. That came out today. And they're trying to say, oh, this has been the policy with previous administrations. Yeah. Do you think that the journos gave a crap what the Trump White House wanted changed or edited in quotes? Are we really all going to act like we're so dumb we can't see what's going on right in front of our faces? I don't think so, friends. We know what's happening here. We got bumbling, stumbling Mr. Magoo Biden kind of in charge of the country, not really in charge of the country. We all know that he just takes orders from the puppeteers around him. And all it takes is a phone call from Barack Obama to get whatever radical left policy or decision that the apparatus of the Democrat Party wants. All he has to do is call Biden. Probably doesn't even have to call Biden. Just sends a text message to one of the people that's making sure Biden has a nice cardigan sweater over his shoulders and a sippy cup for when the cameras aren't around, right? That's all that's required. Tell the people who are Biden's handlers what he's got to say, what he's got to sign. Nobody really thinks this guy has any convictions. No one thinks Biden has principles. Biden doesn't think he has principles. He certainly doesn't have any leadership skills. This guy is the consummate slimy politician. He's been that for longer than I've been alive. We all know it. And now we are seeing the consequences. This is not just in rhetorical terms now. We are seeing what is happening as a result of Biden policies and decision making. And this is a shame, but it looks like we're going to have to suffer the consequences as a country. That's the only way more people will realize how stupid all of this is. Oh, you're also seeing in inflation. They were saying, oh, there's no inflation. Okay. Well, in April, consumer prices jumped up 4.2%, the most since 2008. That's a lot. That hurts in an economy where we should be seeing an explosion of growth and hiring and prosperity and optimism. What are we seeing? A stall? A stall right now and rising inflation? Remember, with that comes higher prices for everything. And the dollars that you've worked so hard to save and put in your bank account, they're worth less. Right now, with interest rates where they are, if you are saving money and you're doing everything the way you're supposed to, you're working hard, you're playing the game in this economy the way that everyone tells you you're supposed to, at the end of the year, if you just put your money in a savings account, your money is worth less, and it's going down every year. At this current rate, it's going down every year. And that's substantial. I mean, if it's going down 4%, even if you had your money in the stock market, let's say you get an average return of 6 or 7% a year, which is pretty good, by the way. But if you're getting that cut in half, and plus you have a down year here or there, losing money, people losing faith in the system. There's going to be inflation. But, you can listen to me, or you can listen to the deeply unimpressive halfwit who is the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, and she's telling you, drawing upon her PhD in economics from Cambridge, which of course she does not have. Not that would change my opinion of what she says anyway. That don't worry, any inflation, it'll be a quick, a little tiny bit of inflation. Play 11.
We are expecting new inflation numbers out tomorrow, and I'm wondering if the gas price surge and the continuous commodity surge like lumber is changing the administration's outlook at all on inflation.
Well, let me first say that, of course, the Federal Reserve, I would point you to them to speak to or provide analysis or speculation on anything as it relates to inflation or the impact of certain external actions. I will say, as we've said in here before, but we'll reiterate that, of course, we take the possibility of inflation quite seriously, as actions that have been taken to date or proposals that have been made. Most economic analysts believe that it will have a temporary or transitory impact.
Oh, yeah. Most analysts, most economists. I love how Democrats think they can cite this as if, done deal. Well, what does that even mean? Most economists? How transitory is it? Oh, all inflation is transitory unless you have a total collapse of your currency. And you could even argue that's transitory because when your currency goes belly up, it ends. So there's no more inflation. It's just maddening to watch the way the media is defending everything about this Biden administration. There are multiple intersecting and expanding crises going on right now in America. Things that affect you. That's what I care the most about here on the show. What affects you and me? And when you're talking about rising inflation, a spiking murder rate, not just from last year into this year, but this year compared to last year, which was already way up. So you've got more violence in America. You've got inflation rising. You've got people not going to work because they're making more money staying home. You've got, enemies, the wolves circling, so to speak, all over the world. Obviously, Russian cyber hacker group here, not scared of us with what they've done on Colonial's pipeline. Hamas recognizing. You think Hamas would have gotten this frisky with Trump in office? I don't think so. Things change. Things change rapidly. The bad guys know the truth of leadership in America right now. They know the difference. And, you've got terrorists that are willing to mess around and find out now, They can mess around, see what they can get away with. You have all of this happening, a border crisis, the worst numbers in at least 20 years, really the worst numbers ever for illegal crossings. And what is the media focusing on? Oh, the Liz Cheney leadership fight. Oh, the Liz Cheney leadership fight. Really? I mean, yeah, it's a news story. It's a second hour of the radio show, maybe, fourth page of the newspaper news story. But, sure enough, that's what you can expect to see. That's the kind of focus. What do you see on CNN right now? Top of the page, biggest story on CNN. GOP ousts Cheney. That's right. What do they need to feed their audience? A steady diet of Republicans are at each other's throats. Sure. Yeah, that's what's really important right now. No one's even going to remember the Cheney fight. I mean, it's interesting to me as somebody who cares about the GOP's future, the direction of the party. But that's because I'm the way I am about politics is the way producer Mark is about hockey, right? I get deep into it. I'm a nerd about it. It's my job. So for normal people, the Cheney fight, I mean, whatever, who cares? We'll talk about it a little later. But notice that the media, there's no narrative of crisis right now. And all you have gas lines, for heaven's sakes. You've got 30% of gas stations in some states without gas for people. That's really anxiety producing, folks, as you all know. That hurts your ability to go to work. That shuts down business deliveries. That is a nightmare for folks. And the Biden administration's, kind of blasé about the whole thing. Oh, yeah, it's a private sector. Colonial's private sector. They'll figure it out. I don't know. Who needs gas? You got a bicycle? Maybe you ride that. Do your deliveries. You could do like an old milk truck and you sort of push it, Just buffoonery. Nincompoopery on a massive scale from Biden and his team. And this is entirely unsurprising because these are unserious people. They're serious about their statism, their socialism, their authoritarianism. Don't get me wrong. But their ideas are those of unserious human beings who do not have knowledge, wisdom, and self-reflection worthy of any power. That's the truth of Biden and the people around him. They should be in charge of nothing. But because the left has seized the commanding heights of major institutions all across the country over a series of decades, because the socialists have infiltrated the Democrat Party, and now the socialists are increasingly showing us that they're actually communists, yeah, I know, guess what? They're able to win the battle of propaganda, to win the perception fight enough to just eke out the power to do stupid things like we're seeing all over the country. And we suffer as a result. But does it even matter as far as the Democrats are concerned? If they can convince people that this is just happening, or it's not happening at all, right? It's either a situation that's beyond Biden's control, or what situation? The way they're trying to cover for Joe Biden right now is exactly as we anticipated. It's exactly what we thought. And thank God that there is conservative media out there. Not just me. There are many voices right now, but I think, this radio show is the best radio show, obviously. Podcast is the best podcast. But I'm thankful for the others on my team, so to speak, generally, out there in conservative media who are holding up the mirror to this administration and seeing what an ugly mess it is.
Thank you. Two topics. I'll go quick. Is the White House rethinking their opposition to new pipeline projects since one really important one goes offline and gas stations start running dry?
I wouldn't say we look at it through that prism, Peter. We look at it, we analyze both the impact, the economic impact, as well as the environmental impact. And that will certainly remain the case, but we look at each pipeline project individually.
Unserious people. Unserious people. That's what these Democrats are. Their ideas are unserious. Their response to why do you have an almost religious zeal against pipelines? What is it that makes you think that? Well, it's because they're climate change catastrophists, and they've been brainwashed with this absurdity of the Green New Deal, and they just think oil is bad, natural gas is bad. People who live in the real world say, thank God for oil and natural gas, because without it, the modern world comes to a screeching halt. There aren't enough windmills, libs. Get a grip. But it's a religious movement for them. It's a crusade or a jihad for green energy. And that's what's going on right now. That's what we're seeing. I have to note, the fact that Jennifer Granholm is the energy secretary is really all you have to know. This is a woman who, on the Bill Maher show, looked into my face when I was actually trying to have a real exchange, and Bill, to his credit, was listening, because I said, it's going to look bad it's bad for these Democrats when they're saying give illegals free health care. People don't like, we're talking about that, and she starts yelling, kids in cages, like a toddler. Demanding candy. I mean, just repeating some mantra in my face like a total clown. She's the energy secretary now. That's what I'm saying. These are the people who are in charge. It's unreal. I mean, look, I thought there were some misses in the Trump administration with personnel, and there were some very bad choices that were made. But they were choices that were made out of a sense of Trump's loyalty and his relationships with individuals. But they weren't radicals. They just weren't part of the MAGA agenda. I mean, they were just self-defeating for Trump. But they weren't people that thought they were going to transform the country in some idealized utopian vision. That's what you've got now. The faculty lounge of Oberlin College is running the government, friends, and that's why you have gas lines, and that's why you have inflation rising, and that's why you have murders spiking all over the place. Where is Biden doing a good job? The one thing they point to is on vaccines, to which I say the vaccine was already developed, thanks to Operation Warp Speed and Trump, and already in distribution, and what are they? They're better at distributing it? Based on what? Yeah, more time means more people have gotten the vaccine. But okay, so they get shots in arms? This is all through private sector pharmaceutical companies developing the technology. Oh wait, but I have to go back for a second to Granholm, because I mentioned how deeply unserious she is, and play clip 3.
Obviously, we have the acute issues with the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, but looking more holistically in a macro view, how does this speed up the efforts at DOE to move in more of a renewable direction, since this is going to have an impact on people at the pump?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously are all in on making sure that we meet the president's goals of getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And, if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you, clearly. But I don't want to, this company is acting in a responsible way. They took their pipeline down so that the ransomware would not spread. And so up to this point, they're carefully reviewing so that they're doing this in a responsible way. The broader issue is a very important issue. It's an issue for the president's priority in the American Jobs Plan, the issue of investing in a transmission grid, for example, so that you don't have the cyber issues associated with it. So there's a lot of broader questions in this. And we hope that we'll be able to see that investment in infrastructure that will facilitate clean and renewable energy.
Just a bunch of babbling from somebody who's just honestly not very bright, but has been in government for many years in different capacities. Notice that she says, in a kind of smug fashion, that if you drove an electric car, this pipeline issue wouldn't affect you. And that's why, we should move to all renewable energy, and, by 2050 or by 2080 and, 2225. I mean, it's all nonsense. The whole thing. Oh, yeah, we're going to get to zero. Please. I've been saying this for 30 years already. Where does she think the electricity for electric cars comes from? I mean, she's the energy secretary. I wonder if she knows. I would love it, if we actually had a real press corps, which we don't, other than a few people at Fox News who get into the West Wing. If we had a real press corps, somebody would probably ask the question, excuse me, energy secretary, so electric cars, they'd all be fine, except you're saying, oh, electric cars, that's great. We don't need fossil fuels. They're not being powered by, electric cars are not getting all their electricity from wind turbines. Where are they getting it from? A lot of it from coal, actually. But you see, they learn, this is the trouble with Democrats. They learn the wrong lessons. A pipeline goes down, causes catastrophe, and instead of the rational response to this, which would be, wow, we need redundant pipelines and we need more fossil fuel access while we're still so reliant on this, which we're going to be for at least decades more, they say, well, yeah, this will really push people into, into the green energy movement. And it's really going to be great. Democrats in this Biden administration, the people that are making the policy decisions, it's like a child who puts his hand on a hot stove and burns himself. In this case, the burdens are the murder rate, inflation, stalled out economy, hiring off by 700,000 last month, gas lines in the Southeast. Burns his hand and goes, oh, maybe if I put both hands on the hot stove, then it won't hurt. They take the wrong lessons from our pain as a country. That's the problem.
This is something that's a very serious attack on critical infrastructure in our country. This pipeline actually doesn't touch Florida, but it does feed into many of our gas stations. So we've declared a state of emergency. We're lifting restrictions to be able to get more fuel into pumps. But the Biden administration needs to take this seriously. Their initial response is, oh, this is a private pipeline, and just shrug your shoulders. This is important infrastructure for our country, and it could impact our economy greatly if they don't respond.
Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, again, taking action, showing how it's done. One day I'm going to come on the show. I'm telling you, one day, I just want you to be prepared. I'm going to say, I disagree with Ron DeSantis. It's going to happen. But right now it feels like it might be a few years off. Every time this guy does something, every time this guy takes a decision and we hear about it on the national stage, you go, yeah, that makes sense. And I want to tell you, this is why I think the Democrats hate him so much. Yes, he's clearly a threat to old man, Magoo, Mr. Magoo, Joe Biden in 2024. Although at that point, let's be honest, we all think it's probably going to be President Harris and Joe Biden will have stepped down. And the Democrats will say, until that happens, they'll say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. That's never going to. And then when it happens, they'll go, yeah, what are you going to do about it? We shut you up while we wanted to. This is so critical. I just had dinner with a very, very MAGA friend of mine last night here in New York. We were talking about this, and I said to him, one of the most important lessons, if there's one thing that conservatives today need to understand, need to know, and this is true about every fight, every political fight, every cultural fight, we come from this mentality of, hey, there are rules, there are principles, there's basic, fundamental decency and honesty. And we have this initial desire not only to express anger, outrage when the left violates those, but we think if we tell them they're violating them. We think if we say, hey, libs, you're being hypocrites, or hey, libs, you're gaslighting. You're pretending you don't know what we're saying is true just to agitate us, that there's some possibility that they'll turn around and say, you know what, you're right. That's too far. We should establish some common ground on that. We should play by the same rules. That's not how it goes. You know what the left's feeling on all that is? When you say the left is being hypocritical, what they're saying amongst themselves and what they're basically telling you to your face now as a conservative is, yeah, and what are you going to do about it? This is the raw exercise of power and the abandonment of principle in pursuit of it. That's the political reality of dealing with the Democrat left. This is why they keep advancing and we retreat so often that merely holding our ground, which we were able to do somewhat under the 4 years of Trump, feels like a victory, but it's actually just holding our ground. As the onslaught of the authoritarian left just continues to seize the commanding heights of our culture, our economy, and our political system. They keep on going. And we say, come on, that's not fair. We're complaining about the refs being paid off, and the other team is laughing, saying, yeah, we paid off the refs. What are you going to do about it? And that's the question that we have to answer now. The Liz Cheney answer is, well, maybe we write a letter and we're really upset and we express how our shared American goals and values will bring us together as we're blubbity blubbity. Yeah, you can take that approach if you want and just keep getting dunked on by libs all the time. Just keep getting dunked on, or you can understand how they're playing the game and maybe dunk back. They hate DeSantis, though, to bring me back to that point here. They hate DeSantis because he is showing that you can govern effectively with good results while respecting individual rights and the Constitution and the rule of law, and that you don't have to always justify your actions with their good intentions, right? You don't have to justify your actions with good intentions. You can actually justify them with good outcomes. They hate this because what they always say is Republicans are the party of no. They don't want to do anything. We, the Democrats, are here to feed and clothe and house and make you feel like you have purpose. That's what the Democrat Party does, right? They're there to be your best friend, your protector, which anyone who knows anything about the government understands. Government doesn't give a crap about you. It just doesn't. It's not there to keep you safe and warm at night. That's what the Buck Sexton show is for. The government does not care about you. And DeSantis shows that, yeah, he's not pretending to be everybody's friend. He's creating a framework for American freedom, success, and prosperity. And that's the role of government. It's not to pretend to be everything for you all the time and therefore be able to control all aspects of your life at all times. So he, in a sense, is showing us just what an unnecessary intrusion into our lives the Democrat approach to governance is, and they despise him for it. And we have run one of the most remarkable experiments of state governance certainly in modern history in this country, certainly the post-World War II era, where you have people like Gavin Newsom, people like DeSantis. You have Governor Cuomo, you have Governor Abbott, Abbott gets like a B-, but anyway. You've got people that showed that they could actually lead, and it wasn't about them, and they kept their states open, and they kept things going. And you had demagogue leftist authoritarians who trampled on the Constitution, who shut down businesses unnecessarily, who destroyed people's livelihoods because they were drunk with power and they wanted the approval of their socialist leftist peers. That's what happened with Gavin Newsom in California, and you compare it to my main man, Ron DeSantis in Florida, and the results speak for themselves. Here he is, play 7.
We've had schools in person, as you've said. We had a successful school year. It's coming to a conclusion over the next couple of weeks, and we're proud of that. But just think of all the millions of kids who were locked out of school for over a year in places like California. That is going to have ramifications for our society for years and years. And I can't tell you, Sean, every time I go out, someone will come up to me and say, "Thank you for keeping us open. You saved my job, or you saved my business." And we know if we were in other states like California and New York, I know my job would be gone, or I know my business would be gone. So we're proud of the success that we've had. We obviously have more to do going forward, but the damage of those lockdowns are going to reverberate in this country for a long time.
Lockdowns failed. We have the data. We tried different approaches in this country. Lockdowns failed. They were the wrong move. And cowardly politicians not only did them, but insisted, even when the data was clear, insisted that they were the only path forward, and you better shut up and listen to them and do as you're told. And if you question this, Facebook and Twitter and these social media giants crushed you. Why? Because they're run by leftists. Didn't matter that they were all wrong. Do you think I get an apology from the Facebook fact-checking team for how everything that I said that they came after me for was true? All of it. They were wrong. I was right. Do you think they send me an apology? Do you think they say sorry that we cut you off from your audience arbitrarily at various points? Sorry that we, severed your connection with people that count on you for information because we felt like it, and covered it up with this, oh, but we have an independent fact checker, please. Hire a bunch of leftist, digital brown shirts to go around shutting down people's ability to speak in the public square. Social media companies should be ashamed, but they're not because they're so powerful. They think they've bought off all the politicians and we have no choice. But it's a long race, friends. It's a long game we're playing here. Ron DeSantis is so important to what's gone on in this country in the last year because he's the only one in a large state with a large population. And just to be very clear, some people get upset. I'm only saying that because we need to make apples to apples comparison. If you live in North Dakota, God bless, you're smarter than those of us who live in New York City paying crazy high taxes for tiny space and everything else. When I say a big state, I'm not saying it's a more important place or a better place or anything like that. I'm just saying to compare California with its population density and size to North Dakota is going to be dismissed, and rightfully so. But Florida is a large and populous state, so it's a fair comparison to New York or New Jersey or California. Texas, the same thing, although Governor Abbott was not great. If it wasn't for DeSantis, they would be able to get away with the lie that the lockdowns were necessary. And so not only did he do great things for his own state, but I am forever grateful because they're going to try to do this again. This isn't the last time. You think we get a rough flu season, there's going to be localized and state level closures and, oh, everyone needs to double mask and maybe we should all wear respirators. And they're going to go back to this. It's hysteria. The most neurotic among us, those who have not made their peace, and this is a big part of it, those who have not made their peace with the fact that we are all going to die, you and I are going to die. We are not in control of when that will happen. And the state cannot fully protect us and never will be able to. People that can't process that notion, can't figure out that that's just reality. They believe if they just cling to the state like a child holding on to, their parents' leg, not letting go, that everything will be okay. It's not true. It's a mirage. And in clinging, in a sense, to the state, there are all these negative ramifications. There are all these intrusions on liberty, all these constitutional violations that come from that. So yes, I understand. I do not like playing the role of political cheerleader for anybody because I come at all political analysis with cynicism about the state and government, and with an understanding that all human beings are fallible and make mistakes, and politicians make more than most. But right now, the governor of Florida, he's not just doing a victory dance. He's doing backflips in the end zone after spiking the football, running up into the stands and making out with the opposing team's quarterback's girlfriend. That's what's going on.
And so when the president makes the goal of 70% of adults receiving at least one vaccine by the 4th of July, we believe that that is an attainable goal. The reason we feel it's important is that I believe that we are about at that critical turning point when we get a certain percentage. We don't know exactly what it is, but clearly the majority of individuals in the country vaccinated, we will see a sharp turning point and a marked diminution in cases. And so, as I said the last time I testified before you, we are in a race between the vaccine and the virus. If left to its own devices, will continue to surge. Based on experience thus far in this country and globally, I feel confident that if we continue to vaccinate people at the rate that we're doing, that we will very soon have a situation where we will have so few infections in this country, we will begin to return to the normality that all of us desire so much.
Why does this guy have to always speak in a 500 or 700 word essay when a couple of sentences would be we have a diminution? Never trust a bureaucrat who has diminution as a crutch word. Notice how much he says it. When you hear my impersonation of him, why do I know that? The diminution of the, there could be a surge, and when your cases are a diminution, this guy's the worst. The worst. We have been running a Milgram experiment, except this little lab coat tyrant has been telling people not to electrocute each other for the good of the country, but to not allow each other to breathe freely, to stifle and agitate and annoy the most basic human act that we do, which is breathing. The basis of our lives is actually taking in breath. Without that, more important than water, food, anything else, without that, we're done. And to put an artificial interruption on that process and all the psychological damage to children, to adults. Every time now somebody wants me to put a mask on, I'll tell you this, I kind of want to throw a punch. I'm just saying. Every time I'm told to do this, I look at them, I'm like, really? I'm immune. Why do I have to do this? Oh, because we're scared about the people who would lie about their immunity, and also we're just terrified about the 1 in 50,000 chance that maybe... This is the society we're living in now? The neurotic get to call all the shots? It's not the country I thought I was living in, but it is the one we have been living in. Fauci goes, 70% by July we'll get to the diminution of the parabola of the, E equals MC squared. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Did I mention I have an MD? This guy can't just say by July 1st, 70% of adults vaccinated in this country. CDC guidance should be he can give his opinion on anything. He does all the time. CDC guidance should be all restrictions gone. Now, That doesn't mean if people want to be psychos and they want to go outside in a gas mask in, in 85-degree weather and live their lives that way because they're, honestly, Fauciism is a mental illness now, and they have been infected with that, fine. I mean, I don't like that, and I'll tell them not to do it, but I'm not going to tell them they can't do it. But no, Fauci will not give definitive declarations on this. They will not give definitive declarations because then we could hold them to it. And here's a preview. They're going to try to move the goalposts again. Do you want to live in a country where the same people, how many of you have had the experience, you go to the doctor says, you're a little overweight. I mean, a lot of you are like, Buck, I have a six-pack. But, the rest of us, okay, you're a little overweight. Cut out butter, cut out red meat, they tell you to cut out all this stuff. Because the 30 seconds that an average physician will spend talking to you about nutrition is, that you're lucky if you get 30 seconds with a doctor on nutrition. But they'll say, cut out this, cut out that. Don't drink coffee. Don't drink alcohol. Try to avoid sex because there can be diseases from that unless you're trying to make a baby. And even then there can be diseases. But they'll tell you all these things and you say, okay, I'm just not going to do that. But thanks for the advice, Doc. Fauci is that annoying physician in charge of the entire U.S. economy and basic human freedoms during the pandemic. That's what's happened.
Dr. Walensky, I used to have the utmost respect for the guidance from the CDC. I always considered the CDC to be the gold standard. I don't anymore. And I want to give you 3 examples where I think the conflicting, confusing guidance from your agency has undermined public confidence and contradicts the scientific guidance of many experts.
I kind of wish we got to hear all 3 of those, but you get the idea. You have Senator Collins saying that she no longer thinks the CDC is the gold standard. And to that, I just respond, yeah, you shouldn't have thought that for about the last 9 months. It has really been clear since last summer that the CDC is run by Democrats who are neurotic mediocrities, playing politics, covering for the teachers' unions, giving absurd guidance that has the effect of law. I hate this term guidance. They are making laws because the federal government turns to them, the executive branch turns to them and says, okay, what do we do? And they go, well, we're just giving you the guidance. I mean, it has the effect of law. It's like a rule-making agency, which there are many of in the federal government, that can come up with some, Fish and Wildlife can say, well, this is the determination we have about, how many salmon you can catch this year. And if you mess it up, they can arrest you, right? I mean, there are federal agencies that have effectively criminal rule-making authority, or they can make you into a criminal if they want. The CDC has taken it upon itself to be effectively the COVID pandemic super legislature. So I just think it's disingenuous when they pretend, oh yeah, we're just giving you our ideas. They know that's not true. They know that the federal government's going to do exactly, especially this federal government, the Biden administration is going to do exactly what they say. And they'll give the Biden administration what they want, which is just more. They want to feed into the pandemic paranoia more. They want to feed into it. Well, we're all seeing now these people are nuts. I mean, I really do believe that Fauciism has turned into a mental illness, that people have become so riddled with anxiety that they can no longer be counted on to be reasonable, to be thoughtful, to make their own decisions, because they're just, oh my gosh, what does Fauci say? Does Fauci say I can hug someone? Does Fauci say I can hug? I mean, you need Fauci to tell you whether it's safe to hug somebody? In the UK, they're actually just being told in recent weeks, you can hug people. In Canada, they'll arrest you if you try to have a church service that doesn't respond to or that doesn't comply with the arbitrary COVID guidelines. So there are other places in the world where this has been a real problem, and people should think differently about the government going forward. you, as a patriot, as a law-abiding, God-fearing, and I know there's atheists who listen to the show too, and God bless. But as a law-abiding person and citizen in this country, you should be armed. Okay, I think now we're getting to the point where everybody should understand that you should enjoy your Second Amendment rights and exercise them. This government going tyrannical at some point in the future, which is the whole purpose of the Second Amendment, as we know, the government going tyrannical is something that you should not dismiss out of hand as an absurdity. Not that you do, but more than ever, I think people have seen, really? The government thinks it has the right to arrest people for gathering with their own family and friends in a private home because the government says so. They did in Oregon. They did in parts of this country. They do in Canada. They do in the UK. I'm going to arrest you, going to take away your freedom because you want to be with your family members because they say it's not safe. It's not safe. Yeah, the authorities, those same authorities did such a good job handling this pandemic, didn't they? You should have contempt for the CDC and for Fauci. That's what they deserve. If this was a war, they lost battle after battle, and now finally, it seems we may have exhausted the enemy, or maybe the enemy's exhausted our reserves. And so we're approaching the end of this thing, but nobody could say that our response to this was a success. And what do? They blame you. Oh, you didn't mask up enough. You didn't social distance enough. Yeah, as if that was really some great pandemic ender. No, they overstated this all along because neurotics needed some emotional crutch to think that we can control this. We can stop the virus. I remember last summer in California, New York, when people were saying, oh, see, we wore masks, so we took care of this. It's not how it works. Back to Senator Collins in this hearing yesterday on Capitol Hill, speaking to Walensky, who's almost as bad as Fauci, and how CDC sucks up to teachers' unions because the CDC is just like so many other federal agencies, a bunch of Democrat deep staters. Play 12.
So here we have unnecessary barriers to reopening schools, exaggerating the risks of outdoor transmission, and unworkable restrictions on summer camps. Why does this matter? It matters because it undermines public confidence in your recommendations, in the recommendations that do make sense, in the recommendations that Americans should be following.
Yeah. If you are a rational, reasonable person who is paying attention, you don't trust the CDC's guidance anymore because you shouldn't. Even Bro Cuomo over at CNN starting to see this. Play 10.
The New York Times reporting that the CDC's numbers on the risk of catching COVID outdoors are misleading at best. What does that mean? Well, we've been working on the assumption that, quote, less than 10% of transmission happens outdoors. However, it is just as likely that the transmission percentage is less than 1%. Why? Why didn't they update it? Is this about them big brothering us?
Yes. The answer is yes. Come on, Bro Cuomo. Come on over into the side of truth and reasonableness on this one. I don't care about all your other stupid statements. I don't care about our political disagreements. I don't care about, the fact that you cover for your brother and all that. On this issue, the more the merrier. The CDC didn't want people to realize how absolutely bleeping stupid it was to have anybody masking outside ever. So they didn't update the numbers. And I was right and they were wrong the entire time. Yay.